There is a saying in the life of Saint Jean-Marie Vianney de Curévaz that he avoided all appearing here on earth in photographs, and that he only was able to be caught as he lay in death. And the commentator Monseigneur Trochu simply adds, tant aimait-il s'effacer. So much did he love to be effaced. Effaced. That literally means that one hasn't a face. One's face is not seen. It happened also closer to us in time with Padre Pio. He wouldn't appear on photographs. That is, miraculously, he just wouldn't appear. Until one day he was ordered to, and he started to settle on the photos. There is also the life of great hermit, Saint Charbel Maclouf, not caught in life, but miraculously after death. Pilgrims came to visit his hermitage and to honour him after he had long gone. And what was their surprise when, on the negative, the Lord supplied humanity with his true likeness. He appeared after death on the photograph. Something of that is there also in the great saint that we honour today. He was the quiet part of the gospel narrative. Not a single word of his is reported. The closest that we have to a word of his is in the scene of the finding of the Holy Child. But even there, we don't have actually what he said. We have what his Holy Mother said. Your father and I, and on she goes to explain the pain. But notice that in the order of things, even though St. Joseph is hidden, he is recognized even in that phrase as being the head of the Holy Family. So he did exercise all the rights and privileges of the father of a Jewish family. It would have been his to be presiding over the sacred meals of the family, notably that of the Friday evening at the eve of the Shabbat. The adult Jew was held in great honor, and actually is still to this day in Orthodox Judaism, and rightly so. We have that actually in common with them, for the Catholic heritage is aware of its roots deep in the faith in which our Lord grew up. We see it coming through in Old Testament narratives. We think of the importance of the blessing of the firstborn, for instance, that it was, as it were, robbed by Jacob, who actually had come in after Esau into existence, his twin brother. Have you no blessing for me? The 12 tribes of Israel had to be blessed by their dying father, Jacob. And in fact, there is that prophetic blessing with regard to Judah. There we have the interesting foreknowledge of the importance of Judah in the line of Israel. Joseph then gave status and protection to the Holy Child. The Lord had to be born in that secure nest and be inserted into society and culture. He didn't just grow up, as it were, as an alien. He firmly took root. And we too have roots and culture, and we honour them. There's an old Welsh saying, Cas gŵr, na charwr wlad a'i maco. He is a bad person who does not love the country that nurtured him. St. Joseph is, however, important not only as a model of the family person, but also as the model of the worker. Indeed, traditionally, there would be a statue of St. Joseph there in the area or areas where the lay brothers, the conversi of the monasteries, would work, quite often long hours, for they would work more than the choir monks. Why? He, in his person, precisely because of his hiddenness and interiority and silence, is, by his presence, visible there in a statue, an invitation to do the same, and also to hallow the work. St. John Paul II has a whole teaching, Laborem Exercens, on the spirituality of work. He notes how there are some, indeed many, occupations upon earth which are by nature fairly monotonous. Manual work which is repetitive, and so on. That actually was highly regarded by the monastic centuries and sometimes opted for out of preference rather than something which took up the mind. The reason being that something repetitive leaves the mind, the spirit, free to engage in contemplation. Because the work has to be done well. But the other bit is invisible and has no economic value, but it has all the value with regard to the work in its invisible domain and dimension, because that in the monastic life is what has value for the whole mystical body. Precisely the fact that the mind and the spirit is free means that one is actually in one act of worship and praise all the days and moments of one's life without any division. And that was perceived to be the case by the monastic centuries right through going back to Egypt, why they had simple occupations, making wicker baskets and so on. They kept on repeating the prayer of the heart, Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner. And they were therefore in continuity with the synax, the Eucharist celebrated over the weekend, no division. And so it is that the sacrality of work and its elevated nature was picked up by all the monastic commentators. St. Benedict honours work and gives pride of place in the daylight hours to it, but does want it to be done in a monastic mode. He insists that permission to speak is not to be easily given, and it is foreseen that speaking would happen in that case for necessary reasons, how to work well, but not to engage in any kind of recreational conversation. And that, by the way, is the problem in some monastic circles right now. People forget that there's a big difference between monastic work and just getting a job done. It is in virtue of sustaining the contemplative life that all is done in the monastery. And therefore, as St. Thomas Aquinas teaches, every single act performed in that realm therefore participates also in the virtue of the contemplative life, because it is in function of it. And therefore, it's all extremely meritorious. So, in the context of the mystical body, a lot of spiritual merit is being gained by work done with the interiority of St. Joseph. all the time engaging with Jesus. Why? It's a way of praying safely all day, because human nature being what it is, one cannot be in formal prayer all day, but one can be in virtual prayer and engagement of heart. That also can be done by any Christian. Because if one is in love with Jesus Christ, one will spend all one's time on earth dialoguing with him, offering up what he's doing, thinking about him and his love, and being aware of his presence and that of his holy angels wherever we are. And that will also change the mode of work. Because, for instance, if one has an accident or some frustrating moment, then one is seen to be either in prayer or not. Because if the first reaction is that of upsetting the Lord and anyone around us at that point, an outburst, bad language, whatever it might be, remaining very human, then at least that is the litmus test. Were we in prayer or not? Or was it simply a job to be done? And it must be done or else. That also can be perceived when it comes to what St. Benedict talks about with regard to obedience to the divine will in the reaction to the person to the command perceived in the bell to stop and to proceed sine mora, without delay, to the work of God. If one carries on after that point, one is working for the wrong side, gaining demerit. So that indicates that one is truly detached from anything but the divine will. It's particularly difficult if one is engaged, for instance, in writing a letter or something of that nature. One's mind is suddenly broken in its line of thought. But the will also is at that point tested. And one is truly a holocaust if one has no will, but only a holy indifference to anything but the divine will. St. Joseph was the quiet saint, and he's not been all that much centre stage over the centuries, until this last century essentially, when he's really come to the fore, partly because great popes like Leo XIII and onwards became very much aware of the demonic attack on the Church. And he was made officially patron of the Universal Church. Moreover, even though he was, true to his nature, silent by not being even mentioned in the Roman canon all these centuries, he was here late in time inserted therein. He's still not there in the missal that we use on the altar, which is actually of 1962, the Latin Mass, because that was published before St. John the 23rd introduced him, around 1963. He's there, therefore, and should be put in there if one is celebrating the Tridentine Mass even now. But he was not there for quite a while in the new Eucharistic prayers, and rightly Pope Francis put him in. That's very recent in time. So all the Eucharistic prayers have him now. That's the hiddenness of our saint. One thing to conclude. There is a direct relation between three things: hiddenness, silence, and humility. And they all participate in one big one: interiority. The noisy soul, the loud soul, is not an interiorized soul, nor is he or she a humble soul. To talk a lot is to reign over others, and not to honour their mystery, because they have no right to be. We reign by talking them out. And also, we don't adore the mystical presence of the divine in the human by actually, as it were before the tabernacle, waiting for a word from another person. We're not listening, we're emitting. St. Joseph, I'm sure, was an excellent listener. Silence favours intimacy on another level with the divine. And the silent soul, who also is not always talking to himself, picks up more easily still small voice. Joseph, our Father and Father of all men, look at this time, look again to thy children, whom in adopting thy Lord thou hast fathered, whom thou hast gathered to be thine own brethren. Call by thy name, on thy name we are calling. Thy church we are seeing the perils befalling. This house that shields neath the strength of thy wisdom. This child that seldom finds health in his morning. We are thy portion, we are thine own burden. Walk thou ahead, place our feet where hast trodden. Thine own unheard and unnoticed come guiding. Thy path of hiding where secrets lie hidden. For thou art unknown and wast thus in thy living. None but one thee saw in thy giving. And 'tis the obscure way that we too would follow, if small as an own deep in striving.